thing here. Hola community, it's Blender Today now, episode 114. Now we do have questions. We have like 50 questions or something like that. The thread is on Blender Today. You can check it in there. But I want to address especially the one that the one that the community, I don't know, maybe people that are actually watching these live streams, they are more aware of the process of Blender and the license, and maybe we don't even have, maybe we're just preaching to the choir by explaining this here. But it's kind of amazing that every time there is a new Blender Development Fund supporter, like whenever there is a new company that joins and supports Blender with a donation, with the donation to the Blender Development Fund, every time we have to explain, like if they were like kids, that Blender is not being bought by anybody. It can't even be bought. The code doesn't allow, the license doesn't allow it. You have to convince 500 contributors to change the license, and that's never gonna happen. So it's not possible, guys. Just okay, full screen. It's not possible to buy Blender in any way. Just stick it in your mind. The good news though is that Microsoft joined the rest of the companies here, like Ubisoft, Embark, Intel, and CGE Institute in the corporate gold section of the Blender Development Fund, together with AMD, Epic, Nvidia, and maybe the next week there are some news as well. This is just great news because the Blender Development Fund, we even put it here in the about section. Ton explains it here how it is. Like you can see this video, and you can it's 6 minutes. How's a Blender feature? Blender a feature is like a flower. You should watch this video. It's on the Development Fund about section. But the great thing about the Blender Development Fund is that it's literally cash that the Blender Foundation has and can invest in the parts that most people don't like to work on, such as bug fixing, code reviews, and just keeping Blender running. That already is it's quite a lot of work. If Blender is stable right now, it's partially because of the Blender Development Fund. So you should thank yourself for doing it. Also, I mean, have you even seen what a corporate gold subscription means? It's a here corporate membership. It's 30,000 a year. 30,000 a year, so that is the divided by each month, 2,500 a year. That is like, I think people spend more on other stuff than this. It's not even the salary of a developer. How can you even buy a software or just that? I mean, thank you, it's amazing, but it's not like it came with like 10 millions in a bag here. Anyway, cheers to that. Thank you for contributing to the Blender Development Fund. Don't be afraid, Blender is not going anywhere. It's but every time we have to explain it, it gets kind of annoying. But that is our fault. Maybe that we are not like delivering the message very clearly. But have you seen Intel making like weird stuff in Blender? No, they added the Intel denoiser, which works in AMD too. It's universal. Have you seen Nvidia doing weird things? No, they added optics, and they do even that development is separate from the donations that they do. AMD also with OpenCL, Epic, Mega Grants, Adidas. Have you seen shoes when you open Blender? No, it's a help. That is also why it's hard to get these kind of donations. It's really hard to get them because a company, you basically have to tell them, yeah, give us our money and we don't give you anything back. Basically, we are going to do what we want, which is fixing Blender, keeping it stable. And it's hard to get a company like that. If Blender would actually agree and give other companies like, yeah, add your features, then now it will be full of bad stuff. But we are not. That's why it's hard, and that's why it's hard also to get even over 100,000. It's been a year, more than a year, but we can't even cross that line because it's a donation, and the donation, yeah, you have to agree that they don't get a say on what Blender future is. So that it's for those news. I hope you understand. I hope I didn't come a bit rude, but let me know. In terms of questions, let's see how it goes. Questions. The first question with 7 votes. Remember, you can vote here. I'm gonna paste the link here on the chat, so you can actually you can vote these questions, and then I'm gonna be pushed to the top, and then I can answer them. I'm gonna refresh the page once more just to be sure that we have the latest and greatest questions. But the first one with 7 votes does it was one about a link about something like a witch hunt. What is that? I just want to ask you guys to stop the witch hunt. What is that? The website is a bit slow because we are currently streaming, and the website is getting a little bit of attention right now. Okay, Blender Foundation, please stop this nonsense. What is this nonsense? The suspense is killing me. Fetching the goods. Okay, while this website loads, I'll be trying to answer the second question, unless this one is here. Users already can't post screenshots or videos of other softwares on Blender Foundation websites, and apparently now users can't even mention the name of any software. Are you serious? This is nonsense. Thumbs down. You are probably referring to the Dev Talk and the Blender, especially Blender developer.blender.org, about the email sent by Tom. Yes, about the fact that we shouldn't be posting or talking about other softwares in Blender channel. It's not really good for the either for the Blender community, for the Blender brand, for anybody, and also has copyright issues. If you have a thread, imagine if you had a thread on Blender on the Zebra, you know, the new ZBrush video with their cloth stuff, with the cloth. ZBrush 2021, he has a cloth feature. Imagine if you will see their forums. I don't even know if they have forums, but if they were open source and they had a forum and they were posting links from Pablo and looking at them and saying, hey, that's pretty neat, and then you see in 2021 that they added the feature, it's not nice. Not nice. And we Blender with Blender, because it's open source, is we can use the word nice, but with other software that are closed source, it's not even legal to do these kind of things. So it's not just like, oh, we don't want that. It's just not nice. Come on, you can describe a feature, you can describe something without actually mentioning, and yeah, it's not a good thing. It happened in the past. I heard that in the past it happened that a famous program contacted not the program itself, but the how do you call it, the lawyers of a software got in touch with a developer, a Blender developer, to ask with a cease and desist, one of those paper notes documents that say, hey, they're stop doing this or we're gonna do stuff. And just because a feature that was being developed for Blender was too close to another feature in another software. So in order to avoid that, in order to make our developers unhappy and the Blender Foundation to get lawyers knocking on the door, it's better to just not mention. Just not mention. You can describe a feature without mentioning other software. So yeah. Unless you meant, like, if you post about Krita, GIMP, or whatever, that's fine. We're all in open source. That's good. All right. What it's about the chat? What's going on in the chat? People are, I see, Christian McKay. Tell me open. Are you a Microsoft employee? People are talking about Microsoft. And also, what's funny is, like, a lot of people talking bad about Microsoft, they're probably posting that from Windows. So it's like, oh, Microsoft is bad. Yeah, but you're on Windows probably. or posting on Facebook. Even the Facebook thread is even more weird, with like all kinds of lizard people, Illuminati conspiracies, and like yeah, like vaccine stuff. We are missing flat earthers. Do we have any flat earthers in those threads? If so, next question, please. I'm gonna leave a heart, but you shouldn't be posting these kind of things on Blender, on right click select. It's not really the place for, it's for features, not here. You could have put in Blender.Today, but not in right click select. It's not a proposal. Hi Pablo, I wish I could know a bit more about Blender moving to Vulkan. How is going the development? How much time do you think it's gonna take? I actually have I asked the developer about it before, and I have his, I hope he answered, because I did it before coming from work, and I just asked the developer, Clement Foucault. So we're gonna read this live. So how is the development going? Oh, and he sent me a link. This is so nice. You see, this is so great about being able to just ask people, developers stuff. So Vulkan support, here you can read more on this task, T68990. We should add support for Vulkan for all windowing system. Linux, apparently it's on its way. That's very nice. Work will be done starting to work on the Vulkan implementation. So 2 steps out of 5. That is pretty neat. And the Vulkan backend and the amount of love this tool is getting, it's amazing. So let's see. So his reply was, this week I've done a lot of work to isolate all the OpenGL specifics to our GPU module. So this part, isolate OpenGL functions. So for people that are not aware, that don't know what Vulkan is, it's a library like OpenGL for drawing stuff on the screen, or like DirectX, for example, on Windows, or Metal on Mac. It's new. So Blender has been using OpenGL since the very beginnings. So switching to a completely different library is gonna take a while. So there's a lot of porting of the old functions into the new system, and so on and so forth. Luckily, some of that work has been done already for 2.8 to modernize the OpenGL 1.1 to 3.3, which is the minimum required for Blender 2.8. So some of the work is going into that direction, but it's gonna take a while. Let's see what else he mentioned. So you can follow the progress here. So you can follow the progress here. Then another question was, how much time do you think it's gonna take? His reply is, I can't really say. To me, it seems that there is up to 1 or 2 months of full development time for all the tasks. Knowing this is going to be split up, I think it could be half a year at most. But it could be faster, but there may be some things I did not expect coming up. Yeah, it happens. It happens. So could be faster, but there are some things that, yeah, there's things that happen that you can't expect, right? Like it's not a one-to-one transform from one function to the other. There are things that are unexpected, or there is even maybe development, because as he mentions, they will be around half a year work at least, but there are always unexpected things that could happen. Half a year though, that would put us at the end of the year, so that would be for 2.93 or 2.92, 92, 93, at least for the very first parts though. How do you think Vulkan is going to improve Blender as a whole? That's one of the questions here. It's hopefully better stability and less driver bugs, small video RAM usage improvements, maybe better performance in the long run, but not in the initial implementation. So in the future, it could be potentially faster. I think maybe especially because of multi-threading. Also, the backend isolation could make other implementation like Metal or DirectX way easier. Half of the work would already been done. So in creating a layer for the Vulkan to be replaced, this layer can be replaced with anything basically. So it's like an abstraction layer. So instead of having directly Vulkan functions, you have like a layer of like you can talk to that layer, and that layer talks to Vulkan, and that could be hooked up with Metal for macOS or DirectX. And how do you think Vulkan is going to change the user's preference over hardware for working with Blender? I guess that's talking about GPU vendor choice. I would say it would not change, but Vulkan hardware support is starting to become quite standard, so by the time it's ready, a lot of hardware will be compatible. That said, Vulkan support may not be the same across all vendors or GPU, but that's hard to evaluate now. It's probably too early. So yeah, exciting times. Half a year, so towards the end of the year, maybe early 2021. That would be maybe to start seeing the first parts. Also, maybe such a huge change may require to have both at the same time, maybe having like an option that you can turn on and use Vulkan at the beginning, so it's not immediate, it's not like boom changing it, but people can test it. Let's see. Chris, dude, next question is, hey Pablo, loving these videos, thank you. What's the status of node-based modifiers and node-based modeling? What version is it currently planned to be included in? As someone who likes to avoid destruction modeling as much as possible, this may be the single feature that I'm most excited for by far. And the answer by Pablo is that, as far as I know, Jack is we're now working on particle nodes, and after that he will work on the geometry nodes. When? You could only guess. I would bet it would only be no sooner than the next years. And yes, actually, thank you very much, Pablo, for replying. I love when this happens because I would have missed this task. For example, this is part of the Everything Nodes project, and it's just a design task by Willem in March. This is just a design task that how things could work. The particle nodes is the first part of this Everything Nodes project that we're gonna see, which you can already test in the latest Blender 2.91 alpha. So in the latest alpha, particle nodes is not gonna be part of 2.9, so just heads up. But for example, if you have a little cube and you have to enable this on the preferences, go to the interface, you have to enable developer extras. Again, this is only available in the builds, experimental builds. Then the experimental section, new particle system. Once you have that enabled, you're gonna find some pretty interesting options, such as quick particles. You know, the quick smoke or the quick fire or the quick explode. Well, now you can also do quick particles, and it's gonna add and set up the particle system using the new node system. So if you go to the editor for simulation editor and you choose the particle simulation, you're gonna see that this guy over here, these three guys, are the ones taking care of this. So not everything works. Some of the nodes that you see here are gonna have like the mockup word in it. So mockup events, mockup. So it means that they don't really work yet. So make sure you are just playing with it, of course, and don't expect everything to work at the moment. It's work in progress, that's why it's under experimental, but we could try some things. For example, let's see the particles, let's make them be followed by like go somewhere. So instead of having here the force, so we have mesh emitter, which is in this case Susan. It's emitting, this is the output, emitters, events, and forces, and the force is basically just Z down, just to put them down. But if I make this 0, they're going in all directions. What if I move them all to one side? Boom. What if instead of using this input, I add, for example, an input object transforms? I can tell it to be the light, maybe. Could this work? There, light, and then you can see now that they all go to where the light is. See, they're following the position of the lamp. Yay! That's awesome. So yeah, bare bones, super fun though. Like moth to a flame, exactly, like moth. So I can't wait for Ian Ewer to start using this thing. Let's continue. So yeah, this is the first step, and there is one person working on it at the moment, plus the reviews, of course. Every time we mention that there is a one person working on something, it's not really one, it's usually more, because the review process that goes in it, and the design process and everything. So instant realism, yes, with moth, make everything realistic. Next question by David Sykes. For people new to Blender, what is the best way to participate and contribute to the Blender project instead of just complaining or asking for features? Hey, the complaining and asking for features is also part of being the community. Complaining, it makes people see there are ways of complaining and complaining, right? There are ways and ways. The nice ways, with a mockup, with an actual, like constructive criticism, help a lot, of course, because sometimes you can lose track of what the community needs. Usually with 114 episodes of Q&A that I have done, and the developers that watch this, I have a very good idea of what the community wants. But still, if you want to know about it, check out the Get Involved section in Blender.org. Here, this is a bit of a mess right now, but we are gonna work on it. I plan to work on it in the coming weeks, but you can see how you can help if you're an educator, or if you want to do documentation or development. So if you actually want to get into development, this page contains a lot of info, how to get started. For developers, if you're a new developer, the advice, for example, it goes to the wiki, and in the wiki you have advice for new developers. Get Blender building, set up a development environment, and then pick a project. You can check the quick hacks or the good first issues link over here in the wiki. That will take you to a list of here, browse first good issue. I'm gonna find a list of problems in Blender, or issues, or maybe paper cuts that are relatively easy to fix and good for a new developer to get involved, to dive into the code. There are ways of complaining and complaining. Pablo Vazquez, 2020. Yes, bodies. Yes. Asking for new features. So asking for new features is in right-click select, but how would you like to contribute to Blender? Besides the Blender Development Fund, testing, reporting. I made a video about how to report a bug in Blender, and you're gonna find it here. It's very clear, I think, in how to report issues. If you don't have any issue to report because the Blender is awesome, you can check into other people's issues. You can go, and if you have the time, remember the time, it's the most expensive thing nowadays. You can, for example, here, Blender crashes on startup. You can check here and see, for example, with this issue, well, if it's a graphics card issue, maybe it's not gonna be easy for you to replicate. But for example, testing the files that the Blender that the people report. If you have a macOS, in this case, you want to check this file and confirm. Yes, it happens in Catalina, macOS, whatever. Everything helps to make clear what is really a bug, what is an issue from the community, or like from the reporter, or anything helps. Next, but I want to make this clear. So now this is a question for you. I actually have the Home Blender Nation link to read about it, about the Blender Microsoft. By the way, thanks for everybody that is actually already using the Blender community badge. Super nice to see it out in the wild so far. For those that are not aware, if you make Blender content and you don't know if you should use the Blender logo or not, you're like uneasy, like is it fine, is it not fine, you have now an option, which is a Blender community badge. You can grab any of these files in PNG or SVG and slap them on your 3D, on your Blender content, anything, and this will give it a nice if we start putting this logo everywhere in the community, imagine all the Blender videos around it, is really gonna make it nice, you know, everything part of the same. Blender Cookie has been doing recently, I saw it, I wanted to send them a message, maybe if anybody from the team is watching. It's super nice. They are actually embracing the orange version of the logo. It works really well with their thumbnails. So thank you everybody for using it. Isn't it better to use a one logo than others that are like all over the place? Let's see. Next question. Again, David Sykes. Thank you for splitting the questions into individual comments, though that way people can vote for the ones they want, and it's not hijacking one post with like 30 comments. Then next, so the question is, drinking some apple juice for my voice. Blender can be a staple. It's Friday. Blender can be a staple in the motion graph community, but it seems like motion graph tools are low on the dev priority list. The text objects, for example. What is the best way to communicate to Blender developers the features we want to receive attention? So the best way to receive attention, for these tools to receive attention, is to make it clear which are the use cases, because the argument that motion graph tools are low on the dev priority list, I think you can get this from 3D printing people, from architects, from sculpting people a few years ago, before Pablo came out of nowhere and made it awesome. The sculpt people were also in the same boat. So it's either writing about the exact tools that you miss and that you think it would make Blender, or the text tool. Just grab the text object. Just don't even think about animation for the time being. Just grab a text object. Okay, what is missing? Because you don't know if you can find a developer out there in the wild that gets inspired by this and makes a little tool that ends up making it into Blender. Or in the worst case, you get someone to make an add-on and put it in the market, and then at least we get an add-on. But if it ends up in Blender, even better. So the best way is to highlight the issues, the missing features, and maybe mention the low-hanging fruit, something that is easier at the beginning, and then go like, I don't know, some kind of bevel tool, or some kind of basic animation for the text object that is missing. You may find a developer out there that maybe is not even a developer yet, and because it dives into this part, maybe gets familiar with it. I think we've seen plenty of these examples in the community. I just mentioned Pablo. We can mention people from working in the video sequencer right now, or working on asset management, or like any part in Blender, getting people inspired. That's the best way, is getting people inspired. Inspire others to see what is exactly missing. Let's continue. How is the chat going? Any word on MantaFlow bug fixes? I believe 2.83 broke it a little. Are you talking about 2.83.0? Because remember, 2.83 is the LTS release. Right now we are in 2.83.3, but next week, I think it's next week, we're gonna be in the 2.83.4, which is a huge like compared to the 0.0 release, it's a huge amount of fixes, because in the blender.org/download/LTS you can find that 0.3 addresses all these issues, but 0.2 addresses all these issues, and 0.1 addresses all these issues. So if you are in 2.83.0, make sure you update. Next week is going to be a new release, so whatever you find, and if you still have the issue, please report it. It's going to make the fixing a lot easier. if, of course, if it can be fixed. If it can't be fixed easily for 2.83, it's gonna be fixed for 2.90 or 2.91. What makes it hard sometimes to backport some of the fixes from the current Blender is in case there was some kind of refactor, for example, where where a feature got rewritten from scratch. It's hard to fix it in both sides. So, anyone use 2.79? Yes, of course there is plenty of reasons to use Blender 2.79. Especially in older hardware, it's even faster than 2.80 in some cases. So it's fine. Who uses 2.83 anyways? All the cool kids are using 2.91 in production already. I don't know if I would call them cool. I would call them like living on the edge. Reston Stanton, hey, hi, all caps. Hi, I like that. Straight. Hi. Do you know if the subdivision improvements include adaptive subdivision, and when will it leave the experimental feature set? It has been there for a long time. It has been there for the longest time because it's been there since day one as an experimental. I actually wanted to ask this to Brecht. I couldn't. He seemed very focused. He was with headphones and I couldn't get the chance to ask, but I will try and remember asking for the next week. I think this feature has been tested so much over the years, it's been years, that it's probably time to upgrade it, unless they have something planned for it. So I need to ask the developers for it. I'm sorry, I don't have an answer. Mordas Mai, hello Mr. P. Mr. P, is it Plastilin Mosh? A-O-S-H? Yeah, Mr. Anyway, the song. Hello Mr. P. If the Blender Development Fund, the one we saw before, if the Blender Development Fund was twice as big, what projects could start now that are currently not in the works due to funding? For example, light linking, maybe? That's a very good question, and I would dare to say yes. I would dare to say yes. Because the people that could develop this tool, light linking, for example, like I was mentioning now, Brecht, for example, Brecht van Lommel, the chief architect of the Blender code, he also spends a lot of time reviewing the code from other developers, and also spends time on dev talk discussing with like whatever questions are, for example, here, thoughts on making cycles spectral render. If you find here, well, you see plenty of talk, lots of talk here going on. But anyway, whenever you see a developer here, it's any time that is spent here. Maybe this wasn't a good example because this is a very valid thing that is ongoing development. But sometimes you get things that don't necessarily or maybe these are, like, for example, this is a help. Long period spent in system calls when rendering in multi-GPU. This is support. This is very nice. I think the only person that could probably answer this is him. But if there was someone else that could answer this kind of stuff, then we would have him or any other very smart developer around to focus on those features. So more funding means more free time for the developers, the core developers that could work on that, including light linking. Light linking is part of the roadmap for cycles, which you can read about in developer.blender.org, render and cycles. And here, for example, this is the roadmap. For the time being, it's not in the roadmap, but you should be able to read about it in the known issues, bugs, workboard, here in the workboard. And you can see some of the features. Maybe we can find here the link. Light linking is a to-do, it's in the cycles features column, and it's been here for a while, since last year. This tag is about light linking. This feature in Blender internal was called light groups, but we wouldn't call it like that anymore. Perlight AOVs are unrelated to this task. So yep, it's A lot of people want it. So more funding, more free time for the developers. And also something that it's expensive in a way, because yeah, it is expensive basically to have managers, for example, to have someone that can manage other people. At the moment, Blender has that in a very basic level, but if you have more funding, you can hire these people that not necessarily why do I say that they're expensive? They are expensive in the sense that they probably are not directly developing, like writing code, but they are supervising other people and make other people's life easier. The more managers you have, yeah, you can have a lot of a bit of bureaucracy, but also you ease the life of other developers to just focus on writing code, which in turn is adding more time for them to code and actually don't focus about managing other people. Let's see. Hi Pablo, the next question by Luke Herbert. Is there a reason why we don't see many plugin developers write new modifiers for Blender? Coming from other 3D software, we see a lot of custom modifiers made, but I've never seen any new modifiers developed outside of the Blender team. Can we expect this to change in the future? This, I don't have an exact answer, but the main answer is that there's no API directly for writing new modifiers. Every modifiers, yes, like Ruthwick here is answering in the chat, every modifier happens on is written in C, so it's part of the code. You need to make a new patch for it. That being said, there has been patches added to Blender lately. There's a whole bunch of new modifiers that were added in the last few years that you can, yeah, that they come from the community, like the weld modifier or the weighted normal edit, for example. Some of them are Summer of Code projects, some of them are from the community. But yeah, there's no current way of doing it via Python. But yeah, actually here Helga gives a very nice answer, and Pablo, thank you once again, gives a very thorough answer with even links to it. So thank you. I'm gonna give it a little heart here. Next question. Hello Pablo, Gadas says, I'm struggling when animating property of enabling disabling visibility of collections. Do you think is there a way to animate or hide or show a huge amount of objects at the same time? You can't at the moment. You can't use collections. You can't animate the visibility of a collection. There are ways. You can do drivers, for example. You can animate if you are using cycles, you can just animate the visibility of the object itself, like add a driver and then use a setting. But yeah, there's no direct way at the moment to animate the visibility of the collections. It's a pity we don't have Dalai here today, because he would know better about the limitations of this. Why was it even, at some point it was possible, I think at the very beginning of Blender 2.8, I think, but it was giving issues, so it was removed, if I'm not wrong. But yeah, let's see, maybe we can ask this again once we have the light again in the show. I have Graffiti ask, hey, I'm an architect who switched to Blender 3 months ago. Welcome to the community. And you're already watching the live streams. That's nice. Did you watch I'm curious, did you watch those before switching to Blender? Was it, and now is okay, this question, did you switch to Blender because of not the live streams, but the community interaction? Was that a factor? I'm very curious to know. Was the community relationship between Blender and the community itself in the social media or on YouTube, whatever, is that a factor when switching to a software? I'm just curious. So he moved to Blender 3 months ago and is enjoying every minute of it. My question is, What are the best add-ons for architects workflow? I found that CAD transformations is amazing. I just want more advice for the ArcViz workflow. The question is for Pablo and whoever saw my question. Yes, I would appreciate the community if you could help out here you have on answering this question, because I'm not very familiar with add-ons in general. I'm not an add-on user myself, but architecture especially, I haven't really done much in that regard. I do remember the Blender Fluid Designer, which was had a presentation in the Blender here, Fluid Designer. This was crazy good. So using Blender technology, a design engine, Fluid Designer enables you to design kitchens, closets, bathrooms, office spaces, and other interior spaces with a professional modern drawing environment. It's a bit old, maybe it doesn't work with 2.0 with the latest, but the demo that they gave at the Blender conference time ago. Oh, okay, oops, nope, no, it wasn't that. It was amazing. I remember that they were here, Blender add-ons. There's a very nice list here where you can probably have Fluid Designer, curve add-ons. No, Fluid Designer had a there was a demo here. This was awesome back in the days. I wonder, Archipack, Archimesh, yes, those two, but they even come with Blender. So the Archipack, you don't even have to go anywhere to download it. It's even here. You can find in the add-ons Archimesh and Archipack. And Archimesh, it's even by the developer Antonio Vazquez, the one that is bringing you all the goodies on Blender Grease Pencil. So it's some add-on you can trust. And architectural objects also. So what happens if I do this? Use submenu. What I'm gonna have? Do I get a mesh Archipack and then I can do a window? What now? Do I draw? I don't. It's first time I try this, but let's see with the fence. I have no idea. I have no idea what I'm doing. I feel like the dog. The dog. No idea what. Yep, exactly. This is me playing with Archipack. Let's see. Next question. So the community, please, if you could go and reply here to Hivet, that will be amazing. Thank you. Let's go to the next one. Bajito. Hello, Sir Pablo. Is it possible to bring back this helpful feature in Blender? Bring back. In active element pivot point in edit mode, you can deselect an edge or face, but keep it as active element for orientation. So active element in edit mode. So for example, if you are editing here and then I want to pivot around this face, I would change the pivot point to be active element, and then that and then that works. Oops, I am here, and then I switch here, make this active, and then active element. And your question is about keep it when you deselect the faces or edges. Yeah, that's a good point. If you cancel or if you deselect or select something else, you lose the selection. Yeah, it goes back to the whatever is selected. That is something that can get confusing for other people if they're used to this workflow where they deselect. So it either has to be an option, but Blender calculates the center from whatever is selected unless there is an active element. So there should be like the concept of active but not selected, which is a bit strange and can be a can of worms for other issues. That's the problem. I would suggest you though to instead use custom transform orientations. And if you have the 3D cursor here, active element, you can add a custom orientation to that face, and then once you select this, whatever, you can rotate around that, which is the custom orientation. I know it's a pivot point. No, then I've mixed them up. I guess the only option is to use the cursor, the 3D cursor, which if you use the pie menus is not the end of the world. Just use the 3D cursor, and then you can deselect or select this stuff, and then always rotate around that point. Yeah. Let's move on. Next question. Oh, wow, 5 minutes already. Okay. Let's do 5 more questions. We have 5 minutes to 6 p.m. Let's see. 3D Illusion says, "Hi Pablo. If I saw a really great open source paper for a new real-time physics simulation system, for example, what would be the best route of getting it into Blender quickly? I'm thinking of maybe using Kickstarter to hire developers, but then I'm worried I might get thousands of pledges only for it to be rejected by Blender." Yeah, that is the tricky part. Some time ago, some people from the community suggested to have like right-click select, but where you could basically put a bounty on a feature, and then you get people to the developers to say, okay, I'm gonna code this feature. Maybe, I don't know, there's €1,000 in this one feature. I'm gonna code it, and then you get people to basically pay for that feature. The issue is that there are infinite ways of coding a feature. You can code it you can make it work, but the code can be a nightmare. So it's two things, right? One is making the feature in like for the users, and the other one is making it so once it's inside of Blender, every other developer that is going to be taking care of that feature, because remember, features are like flowers in the like Ton said in the video that I shown before, or they're like flowers, or like a puppy, like a little puppy. Somebody can give you a puppy, right? Oh, this is an amazing new feature. This puppy starts to grow, and you have to maintain it, and then it needs a bigger room, and then it gets old, and then maybe needs medication and needs care, and you have to feed it every release. So it's very, very easy to not see that from the outside. It's like, just add the feature. What's the problem? Just code the feature and add it. The problem is that feature has to be maintained by the community, by the developers afterwards, after maybe the other developer abandons it, or even if the code is great, it just needs to be maintained. So it's adding more work on the shoulders of the developers, and that is one other reason why the Blender Development Fund is important, because you can hire people to basically maintain this stuff. Because if you buy this feature for €1,000 and then the developer goes away, you have to pay for maintenance, right? It's like when you pay for software, you pay for the service, right? Or when you pay for an add-on, you don't pay for the add-on itself. You pay for, especially because Blender add-ons are GPL, but most of them. But what you pay, the money goes into the service, into the support, into saying, okay, you get support from me. If something breaks, I'm gonna fix it. So in the case of a great new real-time physics simulation system, for example, that is, there are two ways though. One is how this feature will be made into like work with other parts of Blender. Adding new features in Blender just for the sake of adding the features is dangerous, because over the years you could have 10 ways of doing the same thing, the same workflow, same process. So it kind of has to be a bit coherent, all the features that you add. In the case of physics, maybe it's just a new solver. So if you just make, I don't know, a new particle system, or for example, the new sky in Blender, in the recent versions of Blender, you have a new type of sky that you basically have a node where you can choose different types of sky. So if you use a world and then you search for sky, you have, this is very isolated. You see you can change from Pritham, Horsek, Vilki, and Nishita. So this is very isolated. You can just pick a kind of sky. This doesn't need a lot of maintenance per se. It is maintenance, but it's very isolated. If you do a feature that it touches everywhere in Blender, then it's more tricky to make it work with the rest of Blender. Let's see. What would be the best route to getting into Blender quickly? Maybe make a prototype. Maybe get someone to make a prototype. Don't go full on developing it. Just make a prototype. Let's see. 3D Illusions. Another question. Thank you for making it into different questions. I would like to know a bit more about particle nodes. Is the goal of enable users to recreate any of Blender or any other software's functionality entirely with nodes? Advanced users using the low-level nodes that are visual representations of the C or C++ Blender functions, plus logic, variable attribute creation, error handling, I/O, etc. To create more high-level nodes for the community to use as a part of their own shareable node trees. I think this approach will be great, as the node trees could also be compiled when not being edited, allowing for C++ execution speeds and parallel processing. Wow, yes, okay. What's the current design for sharing node trees? I think it's limited to node trees in the sense of the, like, sharing a node group, for the same you have in compositing. Basically, that is the limitation at the moment. I think the approach of having it like super low level nodes that are a visual representation of the C++ is not the top priority at the moment, and it's more focused on actual usage, on actual like make fire, make anything that requires a tornado. I don't know, anything that requires the least amount of nodes possible just to get it done, and not so much low level. That being said, though, you can do pretty much anything. And I even saw on Twitter yesterday somebody making logic gates in Blender, like AND, XOR, and you can basically build anything with that. You can make a computer if you want. But I think the main priority, you can read more about it in the developer.blender.org if you search for everything nodes, the project everything nodes. I think it's in here, developer, and on the sidebar you're gonna see each one of the sections. Nodes and physics is one of them. Here you have more info about the current activity. You have a Blender chat channel and a mailing list, and the workboard, which is where you can read more about the long term and the current backlog, which, as you can see, it's kind of huge. But yeah, just to answer your question, the first approach is to make it easy for the end user and not for other developers to recreate it. I think that would be amazing if we could have that, but it's not so low level at the moment. That was 1, 2. Question number 3. Mr. Blissfly. Hi Pablo, in a previous live stream you floated the idea of remapping the view pie menu away from the tilde key. Yes, something that I would like to see change as default. Is there any further thought on this? The number of keys in object mode and changing the viewport colors in edit mode that was also mentioned. Yes, I thank you for the reminder. That was one of the things that and today is the last day of July, so we don't have Willem anymore available, but I could ask him, and we are too close to 2.9 to make that change. But actually it's been a crazy month. Our lead UI/UX designer, it's not gonna work for Blender anymore as it was working before, so it's been a month of transitions, and going back to the studio, and we lost track of a few of the things we wanted to do, such as changing the keyboard shortcuts once again for 2.9. Since we changed some for 2.8, we thought that 2.90 would be a good moment to do so. What do you think, community? What do you think? Is it good to change it now? Is it good to change it in 2.91? I believe the changes we proposed were not too bad. We're not completely out of this world, such as changing the view pie menu from tilde, which is that weird key that people have it in different places in the keyboard. Some keyboards doesn't even have that key, and the idea was to change it into the V key. That way it's close to the left hand, so you can still do it with the left hand. It's available on pretty much every keyboard, and it's just faster, and it's view, so view, it makes more sense than the V key. So what do you guys and girls think? Let me know in the chat, and let me know in the comments if you're watching this afterwards. I need your support in this kind of changes. The same for changing the object mode. This is more controversial. I think the view one we could do without making a lot of noise, but the numbers in the object mode. This was about changing the modes like object mode, edit, paint, sculpt, vertex, and so on, with the numbers on the top of the keyboard. That is another controversial change. And changing the viewport colors in edit mode. Yeah, that is something that I wanted to do, and I've never got around to do it. There is a task that is actually probably my own tasks. I don't know how can I search for my own tasks. But maybe if I find open tasks assigned to me. No. I'm filtering here. Anyway, I made a task about it, but there was no quorum, no agreement going on in what should be the value of the colors. Basically, because orange, it's very easy to see, but I wanted to make it green so it matches the color here in edit mode. So object, you always relate it to being orange, and then we could save the green for edit mode. It was number 2, I think, or number 3. Number 3. Let me know what you think. And then number 2 would be Momotron asking, hello Pablo, why aren't Amazon and Tesla joining the Blender development fund? They're making so much money with their stuff. Can you poke Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk? All right. Let me find. Okay. Jeff, is Elon there? Yes. Whatever you have. How much did you make today? You made a few millions? All right. Amsterdam, yes, send it. All right, it's done. I don't know how that works. Powell replies, they are not interested in 3D. Those are. I'm not sure, because in you would also you will never think of like Adidas or Ubuntu to support. Why would they support Blender? This is an operating system. These are sports, and this is clothing. So okay, yeah, you could make the relation that they need to do it for like making products, which they use for product visualization, Blender, which is pretty neat. But why even? Anyway, let's Amazon bought Blender confirmed. No, imagine the amount of noise we will get if we had that. If people go crazy with Microsoft, imagine with Amazon. Ay. The last question. So Renston Stanton, hello, how are you today? I recently found a bug in Blender that is a useful feature, actually. However, it's still a bug and needs to be fixed. How should I go reporting it so it can be added as a feature? right select, dev talk, normal bug report. I live in the USA, which has a very different time zones from Europe. The bug is in Mantaflow, specifically the particle system node. This is really a bug. When you find a bug that you know is a bug, it's a bug. Just report it as a bug, because so it's not a feature, it's a bug. Sometimes you get the answer like, no, it's not a bug, it's a feature. But that usually shouldn't be the case. Right click select is for proposals. That's not for reporting bugs. Dev talk is for if you want to develop Blender, if you want to like see how Blender is made. So if you wanted to fix that bug and you're a developer that wants to fix the bug, dev talk would be the right place, not for a regular bug report. So simply go into Blender, help report the bug, and this will open Blender with the developer.blender.org with the right place. And also, while you're at it here, remember to remove the parts that are not maybe related to what you want to report. And that is all. That is the last question for today. It's been over an hour. Sorry for it, for making it too long. I hope it's easier to watch. I'm gonna crop the part of at the beginning. If you're watching this later and it just starts magically, no, I messed up the audio at the beginning, so I'm gonna fix that. I'm gonna move into full screen, and then I'm gonna put something bright on the screen so I get it on my face. How has been the chat? Apple looks very greedy. Yeah, people have been asking Apple to help Blender, the Blender Development Fund. But then we're gonna get everybody, no, is gonna buy Blender. Just Blender cannot be bought. Open source cannot be bought, especially an open source license such as GPL, the one in like that, the one that Blender has. The GPL, some people love it, some people hate it, because it is like a well, now it's not the moment, like Corona, that it's if you take the code that is GPL, you have to make that code GPL. It has to. That's the reason why all the add-ons that I use the Blender API, so pretty much every add-on that you've seen out there, it's free and open source. It's GPL, because the Blender license, it's like a virus in the sense that you have to it propagates the license. It goes and spreads around, which is great for freedom. It's very, very good for freedom, because then it means that whatever is done, it has to be free and open source, available. The code has to be available. However, a lot of other, you can't really interact with the closed source a lot. That's why some companies have been trying to find ways to collaborate with Blender, but they can't make a plugin directly without like some kind of bridge tool in the middle that can talk to their software and to Blender, because that has to be made open source. And that is the beauty of the GPL license. If you want to read more, it's called GPL and GNU, General Public License. You can read more about it, or you can just go to blender.org/about and the license, and here you can see that Blender is free software, free to use, to change, to share, to sell your work. It's free. You can do anything with it. Don't worry, Blender is free. We all believe, and also come on, it's 114 episode that I'm explaining about the freedom of Blender. Ton has been doing this for how long? 20 something years, and it's if you don't believe that Blender will stay free, just go and look back in time. Blender used to be started as a commercial project, and that's when it just didn't work. Something like that doesn't work. Since 2002, when Blender was made open source in October 2002, everybody in the community put a little bit of money, and that code was bought from the company that owned Blender in 2002 to be made open source. Since then, you've seen the progress that Blender has done. Why would anybody on earth like to go back to that? Blender is free forever. Yes, sí. Para siempre, if you speak español. All right. Let's call it a day. Let's meet again next week. All right? Cool. All right, let's bring back the music that in a few minutes, if I didn't mess up again, you're gonna hear that in 5, 4, 3, 2, and bam. All right. Thank you everybody for staying until the end. It's been another episode of Blender Today. I'm gonna see you again, same place, same time, next week for more Blender, freedom, open source, forever. Gracias, arigato, grazie, dankeschön, dankjewel, merci, tak. I think I said all the obrigado, and I think I said all the ones that I know. Bye bye, ciao, adios.